Where, by the way?
Hi, it's Lenny Liebman once again from the Dark Reading News Desk here at Black Hat USA in Las Vegas. And I am really looking forward to speaking to my old friend, CEO of Illusive Networks, Ofer Israeli. Ofer, it's good to see you again, man.
Good to see you as well. Thank you for having me.
So it's interesting. I think you're the first person who said they would like to talk to me about insider threats, as opposed to all the discussions I've been having at this desk about worrying about what people are doing from the outside. Can you tell me a little bit why you want to talk about the insider?
Sure. Well, for a variety of reasons, but insider threat, it's a very prevalent problem today, right? And we're seeing that it's become top of mind for many of our organizations who have suffered from this problem. More so, what we've found specifically with Illusive, and I assume we'll get into some of that later, is a fantastic amount of these malicious insiders, a lot more prevalent than what you would expect. And so we think it is a very important topic that we need to address as a security industry.
Yeah, and I'm glad we're doing it. And we are going to talk about how sort of deception technology can be effective against the insider threat. But before we talk about that, I think we need to define for everybody what you mean by deception technology, because a lot of people just think, oh, that's a honeypot or something. So just give us a little description there.
Sure. So deception technology, to your point, has evolved a lot from the old world of honeypots. And when we talk about deception technology, we're talking about distributed deception technology, which is a very effective means to catch any lateral movement inside the organization. So the essence of it is when attackers need to move inside the organization to reach the targets thereafter, they're deceived by a bunch of information every place they look and make incorrect actions which can be picked up on very precisely.
And so then how is deception technology specifically useful against the insider threat?
So when we look at insider threats, it's really just another trait with specific characteristics, obviously, of an external threat actor, right? And when you think about the common case of insiders, many times that still involves the same recon and same lateral movement that needs to occur to reach a target that they want to get. You think about a rogue employee that might not have access to your most precious data and your most critical database. When he needs to access that database, he needs to figure out the environment, he needs to learn it, he needs to propagate and move inside the environment and finally get to that database. Deception technology comes into play exactly there, right? It disrupts this whole lateral movement phase. It ensures your organization to be such that when lateral movement occurs, you can actually pick up on it very, very early on.
But there are some differences between an insider and an outsider, and I'm thinking about two in particular. First of all, a really good outsider is much more sophisticated than perhaps most of our insiders because they're perhaps making a living or they're a state actor in doing this stuff. And secondarily, on the other hand, the insider may have an advantage of some innate knowledge of the organization and the architecture, which also gives them an advantage.
Absolutely. So touching on those two fronts, first of all, absolutely, external threat actors typically have a lot more expertise, experience, understanding than the regular malicious insider. But what has actually changed over the last few years is the level of access that malicious insiders have to common attacking tools, right? So today, maybe if I'm just an employee, I don't need to figure out that in order to get user credentials, I need to dump the LSAS process and scrape it and find the credential structure and parse it and get what the actual hash of the password is. But I can go out to GitHub and download Mimikatz and I'm done, right? Yeah. And it'll do it for me. So now we see less sophisticated actors which have access to strong tools and it's at their disposal. So they use many of the same methods. So that's one trend that we're seeing over the last 5 years probably. The second thing in terms of knowledge of the environment, absolutely insiders do have an advantage of being more knowledgeable as per the environment. And here it really falls into how deep is that knowledge and how deep is that access. And I would say very roughly, you could be thinking about, your super mighty admin that has the keys to the kingdom and has access to it all and knows it all. If that's the malicious insider, honestly, you're screwed. Mm-hmm. He has everything he needs. He's gonna win. But on the other hand, most of the malicious insiders are not that almighty admin. And they too still need to do some level of reconnaissance and still need to escalate their privileges and so on. And it follows many of the same patterns as external threat actors.
Yeah. And can you give any specific example of where deception was useful in neutralizing a particular insider threat?
Yeah, absolutely. We've seen a bunch of really crazy stuff across the board, things that are truly mind-boggling. Interesting example, we saw a malicious insider who followed a deceptive trail to a deceptive network share. On that, he found customers' data, deceptive customers, so he copied that information over to his machine. He knew they had a DLP solution installed, so he took that info, put it inside a PowerPoint presentation, and used his private email to send that PowerPoint presentation outside of the organization. Unfortunately for this guy, he was following a deceptive trail, so one, we were alerted upon it once he touched the deceptive share itself. But secondly, via our forensics collection, we actually grabbed screen captures of the machine itself. So we got a movie of this guy carrying out step by step, mapping out the network drives, copying the information, putting it inside the PowerPoint presentation. Very difficult to rebut claims once you've really seen yourself on tape.
Yeah, those forensics are pretty powerful. And of course, although we've been talking about insider threats, obviously deception or distributed deception technology is super important for external threats too, yeah?
Absolutely, yeah. It continues to have its benefits when you're thinking about nation states, you're thinking about sophisticated cyber criminals. It really is the line of defense to protect anything that is lateral movement. Our claim, very roughly in an architectural perspective, do everything you can to keep the bad stuff out, but don't anticipate the bad stuff won't hit the network. It will, and once it's inside the network, make sure you have the mechanism to get very, very early detection, and one with a very high signal-to-noise ratio, so that you can actually understand what's happening and not spend all your time going through false positives and not really finding the real alert.
Yeah, well, it's a good complement. You have prevention, you have interdiction, and then sort of deception is another sort of layer there where you're keeping them from doing the right thing.
Right.
Anything else you want to share real quick?
Yeah, on that comment, I think what's important to note is that as we are a lateral movement protection company, we've actually kind of expanded our horizons, and we're doing more on the prevention front in regards to lateral movement on top of the detection. And with Attack Surface Manager, as an example, you can map out what are all of the keys that are inside the environment today, or access footprints as we call them, that allow attackers to move laterally inside the environment. And guess what? 95% of that you can clean up. You don't really need in that environment, and you can do so on a continuous basis. So Attack Surface Manager surfaces to you exactly the types of information attackers will pick up on, and then remediates by removing it from the environment, and you can make sure you're in the best shape possible to a bad day happening.
And last question, really briefly, if somebody is interested in this technology, what's their next step to engage with you?
Yeah, I encourage our viewers to visit our website, our blog specifically. We cover many of the use cases that, for example, the one I discussed earlier with the insider capturing the customer information, and a lot of supporting material that is very interesting. And I do urge us as an industry to take this problem very seriously, make sure we invest in the right technologies, processes, people to really safeguard ourselves against this dramatic issue.
Great to talk to you again, man.
You as well.
That was Ofer Israeli of Illusive Networks. I'm Lenny Liebman from the Dark Reading News Desk. There will be more from Black Hat USA in Las Vegas in just a moment, so please stand by and join us.